Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. An incredible number of things happening in the world of cannabis here in the United States and around the world. Standing by in the wings is Mr. John Cornett. It's good to have you back, John.
Thank you.
And he'll be playing some cool cannabis music at the opening and closing of the show here. Next to me is the illustrious Gasper Leach of Time for Hemp. Hey, Gasper. And we'll be taking your phone calls. We have a couple of great film clips for you. Jorge Cervantes talking about growing outdoors and humans, Tree of Life. So stay tuned as we bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves. Here they are.
I feel the force.
All right, our first story tonight is from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. President Obama's nominee for the director of the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, or the ONDCP, the acting director, Michael Botticelli, was confirmed by the Senate 92-0 on Monday, granting him one of the highest offices in our country's drug control regime. Botticelli is a recovering alcoholic with an extensive career in experience in public health. The new drug czar, as he's known informally, has the potential to take more of a public health approach than he did his predecessors, including former Seattle Police Chief Gil Kurlingowski, the most recent holder of that office, who was confirmed as the commissioner of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection last March. Botticelli has recently stated that Congress should not interfere with the will of Washington, D.C. or the District of Columbia voters to legalize marijuana last November, despite the ONDCP's official stance on legalization. Last week, Botticelli was quoted in a conference call saying that the ONDCP will bar federal funding from drug courts that prevent access to medication, such as assisted treatment for opiate addiction. Appointing someone who personally understands addiction provides the hope that the government is taking a stronger public health approach to drug policy. Botticelli understands that it doesn't make sense to treat drug users as criminals because imprisonment has never proven to be effective at reducing abuse. Michael Botticelli said he supports the administration's current policy of allowing states to regulate marijuana for adult or medical use. During an event hosted on Friday by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, acting U.S. drug czar Botticelli said he agrees Congress should not interfere in the District of Columbia's decision to make marijuana legal for adults. Also out of Washington, D.C., drivers who test positive for the presence of THC in their blood are no more likely to be involved in motor vehicle crashes than are drug-free drivers, according to a case-controlled study released last week by the United States National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration, or the NHTSA. The authors reported that drivers who tested positive for the presence of THC possessed an unadjusted elevated risk of accidents of 25% compared to control drivers who tested negative for any drug or alcohol. However, this elevated risk became insignificant after investigators adjusted for demographic variables such as the driver's age and gender. After the researchers controlled for both demographic variables and the presence of alcohol, the THC positive driver's elevated risk of accident was 0. By contrast, researchers reported that drivers who tested positive for low levels of alcohol possessed a statistically significant risk of accident even after controlling for demographic variables. Drivers with a blood alcohol content of 0.003 possessed a 20% greater risk for motor vehicle accidents compared to drivers with 0. So researchers did not analyze variations in the driver's THC levels to similarly estimate whether higher or lower THC levels may impact crash risk in a dose-dependent manner, as has been reported previously in some separate analyses of fatal crash data. The authors of the National Transportation Study concluded, quote, "This finding indicates that these other variables, age, gender, ethnicity, and alcohol use, were highly correlated with drug use and account for much of the increased crash risk associated with the use of illegal drugs and THC. The results of this study are consistent with previous well-controlled studies," end quote. The study, which involves some 9,000 participants, is the first large-scale case control study ever conducted in the United States to assess the crash risk associated with both drugs and alcohol use by drivers. The study's findings contradict allegations by the National Institute of Drug Abuse, or NIDA, and others that marijuana use more than doubles the driver's risk of being in an accident, but are largely consistent with those of a 2013 literature review published in the journal Accident Analysis and Prevention, which reported that cannabis-positive drivers did not possess a statistically significant risk of either fatal accident or motor vehicle accident causing an injury. Also out of Washington, D.C., the newly appointed U.S. Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, told CBS News last week that he believes that cannabis is a beneficial therapy for some patients. Speaking on the program CBS This Morning, Murthy said, quote, "We have some preliminary data showing that for certain medical conditions and symptoms that marijuana can be helpful." He added, quote, "I think we have to use that data to drive policy making, and I'm very interested to see where that data takes us," end quote. Later that evening, however, Murthy appeared to retreat from this comment. In a Department of Health and Human Services statement attributed to the Surgeon General, Murthy said, quote, "While certain trials for compounds of marijuana appear promising for some medical conditions, neither the FDA nor the Institute of Medicine have found smoked marijuana to meet the standards for safety and effective medicine for any condition to date," end quote. Dr. Murthy was confirmed as the U.S. Surgeon General late last year. Our next story tonight is also out of Washington, D.C. A bipartisan coalition of House lawmakers last week introduced legislation, House Bill 667, the Veterans Equal Access Act, authorizing physicians at the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, quote, "to provide recommendations to veterans wishing to participate in state medical marijuana programs." Measures now awaiting action before the Committee on Veterans Affairs, but it would be good if those doctors at the VA could recommend medical marijuana. In Uruguay, the drug czar of Uruguay, Julio Calzada, met with the drug czar of Argentina, and the Argentinians say they're going to start offering medical marijuana to patients there. Here at home, a Southwest Oregon farmer who's been issued the first state permit to grow industrial hemp said he and a nonprofit group of growers and activists plan on a 25-acre hemp field this spring. Edgar Winters, not the rock guitarist, but the Southern Oregon farmer of Eagle Point, and the director of the Oregon Agricultural, Food, and Rural Consortium, said it's difficult to get seeds, but also expressed optimism, according to a report in the Capitol Press. Winters said the group would be ready to warehouse and process the hemp once the crop is harvested in late summer. He said, quote, "We're in a position to do 40 tons a day at our processing mill." Winters said he's not to be confused with the Texas blues rocker Edgar Winter of the Edgar Winter Group. Mr. Winter said, quote, "We've got our ducks in a row," end quote. Importing hemp seed requires the approval of the federal government's Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA. The Oregon Department of Agriculture and Oregon State University are working with the DEA on that process. Winters said a Canadian hemp company, Hemp Textiles International, has breeders' rights to see it and will not share their genetics with Oregon growers. Oregon state law requires hemp seed produced in Oregon to be replanted. Winters said, quote, "We're at a standstill," end quote. But he added that seeds might be available from Russia, Hungary, Australia, or New Zealand. Winters went on to say, quote, "We have to import to get started. We don't want our farmers to sit around another year waiting on seed, end quote. Just across the river in Washington State, the city of North Bonneville, Washington, a community of about 1,000 residents on the Columbia River, doesn't appear extraordinary at first, but it's unique in one way. It's about to become the first municipality in the state to run its own marijuana store. The city's just weeks from getting a license to open the store, which local officials said could serve as a model for other cities across the state. North Bonneville was founded on the timber industry, which is now in steep decline, so it counts on tourism as a major economic force. The city's just 45 miles northeast of Portland, Oregon, another state which recently legalized cannabis. But city leaders said tourism wasn't the driving force behind their decision to open a marijuana store. North Bonneville Mayor Don Stevens said the city wanted to seize control of its own destiny in the evolution of a legal cannabis market that holds great promise, even while pockets of hardcore opposition to cannabis continue to exist. The mayor said, quote, "I view North Bonneville's approach as the city being welcoming to the whole idea of recreational marijuana legalization and trying to assure it's done as cleanly and professionally and as with as much of an eye on the public health and welfare as possible," end quote. That was from Mayor Stevens of North Bonneville, Washington. He went on to say, quote, "The financial aspects of it are certainly part of the equation, but they weren't the primary factor," end quote. The city's setting up an entity called a Public Development Authority, which will own and oversee the cannabis store while also shielding the municipality from legal and financial liabilities. But the PDA's board of directors must be approved by the North Bonneville City Council and its charter, and thus the marijuana store itself can be dissolved by the city at any time if local leaders decide that's necessary. Finally, we have a couple of exciting news stories out of 2 U.S. states. In Maryland, on Wednesday, a bill that would legalize, regulate, and tax marijuana similarly to alcohol was introduced in the Maryland General Assembly. House Bill 911, the Marijuana Control and Revenue Act of 2015. Kurt Anderson, a Democrat from Baltimore, Maryland, would allow adults 21 years of age and older to possess up to 1 ounce of marijuana and grow up to 6 plants in their home. The bill requires the Maryland Comptroller to establish rules and regulations for the operation of cultivation facilities, product manufacturers, retailers, and safety compliance labs. It also creates an oversight commission to monitor marijuana businesses and advise the controller on regulatory issues. Closer out in the west, New Mexico, for the first time in the history of the United States, a state legislative committee in New Mexico voted on yesterday, in favor of taxing and regulating marijuana in New Mexico. On a vote of 5-4, New Mexico State Senator Ortiz Pino's Senate Joint Resolution 2 passed the Senate Rules Committee. Senate Joint Resolution 2, or SJR 2, would allow for the possession and personal use of marijuana in New Mexico by persons 21 years of age and older, and for the production and regulation, sale, and taxation of marijuana in New Mexico. The vote sets in motion a process to put the issue on the 2016 New Mexico statewide ballot for voters. That's the end of our hemp news segment tonight. A lot of exciting things going on, don't you think, John?
My head is like on fire.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start. I'm just grateful that you've been doing it so long, brother. You know what to do. I got a question. Is the new governor a good thing or a bad thing?
The new governor is a good thing. The old governor signed to recriminalize marijuana. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in the show. But the new governor is a good thing. In fact, I even worked in Senator Kate Brown's office as an intern and an aide in the 1997 legislative session. So
awesome.
The old governor signed the bill to recriminalize marijuana. Just last week, we were complaining that he said he was going to try to cut the amount of marijuana that Measure 91 allowed a person to possess in their home of 8 ounces. He thought that was too much. We took issue with that.
Thank you.
And I have more to talk about, Governor Kitzhaber, but I'll let you play the song.
That, brother. I want to dedicate this little ditty here to Brother Ray over here who's sick. We love him. Ray, this is for you, brother. Just a redress of a little ditty I wrote recently.
John.
Thank you.
Welcome, Casper.
Thank you. Happy Friday.
Welcome, viewers. We are taking your calls tonight. If you have a question about ending adult marijuana prohibition, restoring industrial hemp, or helping medical marijuana patients, or any of the news that's going on in the world or in your neighborhood, give us a call at 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. A lot of exciting news this week.
There is a lot of interesting information coming out of Washington and all around the globe.
That's true. That's true. It was the whole dynamic is changing to see if our federal officials start to say, that they don't want to interfere in the state. The ONDCP, the drug czar, who by law can't say anything nice about marijuana. They're prohibited from saying anything positive about marijuana legalization. And he's saying that they don't want to interfere in state legalization measures or in Washington, D.C.'s legalization measure there. They're in the seat of the federal government. It's just a really exciting
What I think is also very positive is that we're going into, I think, our second year where hemp crops are being placed into the ground. Not just one state now, but I think in 3. And that is even more exciting. And we were having medical marijuana dispensaries and medical marijuana grow rooms and gardens and a lot of victories on the medical marijuana front in this war on drugs, which, by the way, we still aren't getting our prisoners of war home. But it seemed as if the hemp aspect of this plant, the industrial, creating the jobs, the products, and helping Mother Nature to heal, was being overlooked. And now this year, not only are we going into a second year in one state, but now we got other states coming on board, members of the Senate and the Congress discussing the need to reintroduce it as a cash crop, the possibility of it happening here in the state of Oregon, where we're going to have seeds for use of production of making different types of products. That to me is even more exciting than anything else that we could ever say about that's coming out of the news.
Yeah, I think that industrial hemp will ultimately cause a much bigger change to the ecology and the economy of our planet, especially when we can start using hemp without regard to its THC level, but with regard to its productivity for seed oil and protein and fiber. We shouldn't be judging or setting standards of THC for the production of seeds. And so hopefully we'll see some exciting research here in Oregon and around the world to
and I hope it doesn't
make certain we can do this. Use hemp for fuel. This is our weekly display of our hemp flame for freedom. We'll have this will be our wick next week. This is a little hemp wick and a little bit of hemp oil. It just shows that hemp is a viable fuel, that you can actually pour this directly into any diesel engine and it will run the diesel engine. You can make plastics out of it. Anything you can do with petroleum you can use for this, only this is non-toxic. Petroleum poisons everything it touches. This, the byproduct of making this is food and fiber. And that's the reason marijuana is illegal. And that's going to become very clear in the next few years, I do believe.
And I think what's going to help make this escalate will be after the first few crops have come in and they have not only created better products for us to sell on the open market to compete with other countries, but then they turn around and recognize that they created a few new jobs and maybe a stronger tax base.
I think it's
and they'll
going to be
think,
a lot
why
more,
don't we do it again
a
and
lot more than a
multiply
few.
it?
I think it's going to be a lot more than a few. When we can start using cannabis to run our internal combustion engines and power generators, when we can make building materials and paper and fabrics and wood out of hemp, when we can start to do that again without the artificial economic barriers imposed by marijuana prohibition.
Is this what he meant when he said, carry a big stick?
That's a pretty big stick.
Is that what he meant?
That was Roosevelt. Teddy
was
Roosevelt.
It like a hemp stick that he was talking
big
about?
Stick. Walk softly. Anyway, we are taking your phone calls tonight. If you have a question, you can call us at 503-288-4442. And we have a caller standing by, so let's go ahead and take that caller. Welcome to the show, caller.
Yeah. Hi, is this Paul?
This is Paul. And Casper.
Paul, this is Denny. This is Denny Dempster.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Still recovering from a stroke I had in 2010.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm glad to hear you're recovering.
I'm glad to make it. It was touch and go for a while. I wanted to let you know when I was in the hospital, doctors asked me all sorts of questions. Of course, do I smoke? And I said I'd never used tobacco, but I have smoked pot for 30, 40 years. He said, looks at me and says, "That doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt you."
All right.
Oh, I also wanted to ask you a question.
A doctor who
regarding
knows something.
Regarding the places you can go ahead and buy, when it becomes okay for just your private use and that sort of thing, do I need a card to go there?
You know, for the dispensaries that are there right now, you need a card to visit the existing dispensaries. For the stores that will service adults with a fairly much more reasonable tax than was imposed in Washington or Colorado, those stores, you'll just need ID showing you're over the age of 21. So you only need a card for the medical marijuana dispensaries, and they're the only stores, at least till about this time next year. By law, the state of Oregon has to start accepting applications for these stores by next January, but they may start implementing that more quickly. So we can hope it'll be earlier than that. But once those stores start opening, you won't need a card, just an ID showing you're over the age of 21 to go there. And right now it is legal to possess marijuana, to have up to an ounce on your person, and to have up to 8 ounces in your home, and to grow 4 marijuana plants in your household. So that's legal right now. And if you have a medical marijuana card, you can also have 6 large plants in addition to those 4, and 18 small ones. Now last week we had an attorney on, a great guy, Lee Berger, and he misspoke and wrote to me and asked me to note this and to say he was sorry for this mistake, that he didn't think that you could have the 6 medical plants and the 4 plants. But he wrote back and asked that I correct that, and that in fact after he did the research, he's sure that now you can have 4 plants per household, and in addition to that, 6 medical marijuana plants per patient in a household, and 18 little baby plants less than a foot tall and a foot wide if you have a medical marijuana permit. But if you don't have a medical marijuana permit and you're over the age of 21, you can right now have 4 marijuana plants in the state of Oregon and 8 ounces of marijuana in your home and 1 ounce on your person.
Yeah, we just recently moved into an apartment, and that was one of the questions, is, well, were we going to grow marijuana in our apartment?
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't
I know
think
there's
we
some
were.
apartments that are friendly to that. I know Casper lives, and our friend Ray here both live in one Wimbledon Square and Wimbledon Green, I think it is, that allows people to grow their own marijuana there. If you have a permit, you can grow medical. If you don't now, you can anyway.
Yeah, right.
I don't know,
right.
you know, but other apartments may differ.
This guy up in Washington, that is a dispensary that has reduced his cost to about $10 a gram. What's with him? Do you know?
Well, you know, the cost is coming down. There had been a glut. At first, there was a shortage of processed marijuana available in the regulated system in Washington. Now there is a glut, so they've reduced their price. But unfortunately, Washington's law does not allow people to grow their own. So the only way you can grow your own marijuana in the state of Washington is with a medical marijuana authorization. Then you're allowed to have 24 ounces and 15 plants in Washington.
Do I need a card to go into Washington?
No, there are stores that just service anyone who's over the age of 21, so you don't have to have a card. Now, you do need a card for the dispensaries, but those are usually, you know, they're different businesses.
Right. One last thing, Paul. Congratulations for all your hard work paying off.
Thank you, sir.
Incredible.
I appreciate that.
I look back about 25 years when you were my caregiver, and it was kind of scary then, but
yeah.
We sure hope the best.
Well, I'm certainly happy
Paul,
to hear you're recovering, Denny. Thanks for calling in. And
you bet.
You know,
Take
we
care.
have an audience here at our TV studio, so some Friday night, if you feel up to it, come on down, and I'd be happy to see you again.
I'd love to. I'd
All
love
right.
to. I can't drive anymore. My wife drives me everywhere.
Ah.
It cost me.
Well, she's welcome too.
It cost me one eye, and so it's I can't I can't drive anymore. But I sure can get high, and it's nice.
All
Well,
right.
I love you a bunch. Hopefully
All
to
right,
see
thank
you
you, Bill.
soon. All right.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good night. I think we have another caller. Welcome to the show, caller. Two more callers, actually. Hello, caller.
Me?
You.
Oh, hey. I think that marijuana is fine, but I don't smoke it. But
I used to smoke, and I
wish
quit
not.
smoking mainly. I still smoke sometimes if someone else has it, but usually I just vaporize. But you know, you don't have to smoke as long as you don't want to put me in jail for it. I'm happy.
Gotcha.
Anything else you wanted to say, sir?
I hate that we let liquor involved with marijuana because they're two separate drugs. If
Yeah.
we mix them up with the liquor,
I disagreed
and
with that
drugs,
as well.
it could be a bad thing.
Well, and
Yeah.
marijuana is not
And
a
that's
drug; it's an herb.
big thing that they have to.
Yeah, it's a shame they're tied together in Washington and Oregon. You know, they're tied to the Liquor Control Commission, but you know, the liquor stores already had a state organization and were selling to people over 21, so they had that in place. But I agree, can't, you know, like you said, say it again, a little louder.
Marijuana is not a drug; it's an herb.
Yeah, alcohol's definitely a drug.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I think about half the people in prison are there for crimes they committed that they don't remember because they were using alcohol. You know, it happens every day, unfortunately. Okay, we have more calls. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, is that me?
That's you.
Hi guys.
Howdy.
Congratulations, all your work is paid off.
Thank you. But you know, when you win one battle or, you know, war, there's always a whole new set of issues and things. And I'm always one to be ready to embrace change. And so I'm very happy that we have a whole new set of issues now instead of so many people going to jail, even though a lot of people still are going to jail. There's more work to do. They're still executing people in Malaysia for small amounts of marijuana. They can put you in jail in most of the states in the U.S., so there's still a lot of work to do. But it's good to see we're finally winning one after, you know, for me, well over 35 years of working for changing marijuana laws.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, if you had
35
kids when you
years.
started this, they'd be married by now. They'd
Yeah,
be
30.
having
Well, you
kids.
know, I first went to a protest
Lord.
of marijuana laws in Washington, D.C. in 1978.
3.5 decades.
78.
Good
So
Lord.
that's 37 years ago. And then I became Washington State Normal Coordinator in 1982.
Young Paul
So-
Stanford.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It does.
Yeah,
But
it does.
I moved to Oregon and started working on marijuana legalization in Oregon in 1984. And so we put a ballot on the initiative in 1985, but we lost overwhelmingly in 1986. We actually set the record that still stands today for the earliest initiative to ever qualify for the Oregon ballot, 13 months in advance of the vote. There's a little story about why that happened, but I won't go into it all right now. But
Well, that's okay.
yeah.
Well, I had a question. I was interested. It surprised me that somebody else called about apartment complexes earlier.
Yeah.
And we're not allowed to smoke anything inside the house, but the way I understand it, you can't smoke pot in public.
Yeah, that's right. You
And-
cannot smoke marijuana in public under Measure 91.
Yeah, and I have a vaporite. It's like a volcano, but it's called a vaporite.
Uh-huh.
And it lets smoke out, but it's safe as can be. And I'm wondering what temperature I should put it on.
You know, my favorite temperature is like between 360 and 370 degrees. I find I don't cough. If I turn it up higher than that, I do cough. Other things like benzene start to vaporize at about 380. So I try to keep mine at that temperature, about 360 to 370 degrees. And I find that works best for me.
And then Katie,
that's Fahrenheit. If you're on the Celsius scale, that'd be about 184 or 185 degrees Celsius.
And then Kelly Christian from KDK Distributors helped me appreciate my vaporizer. I have a sore throat sometimes after using a vaporizer, and it starts feeling like I'm smoking glass. And he suggests that before you start vaporizing your little bit of bud in your thimble, add 1 small drop of water and then vaporize it on like 80 degrees the first time and then 85 the next time, and turn it up a little at a time so you're not cooking it really hot every time that you're putting it in there, and you're still getting the contents out of it. But just add a little more heat to it each time you fill up a bag. So you might try that as well and see how that works, and it might even stretch your herb a little farther.
Okay, great. Well, I wish you many more great days ahead.
Thank you. And I want to remind you, too, once you've vaporized your cannabis, it still has medicine in it, and you can take it orally as medicine to help you sleep or for pain, or give it to somebody else who could do that, too.
That's what I usually do, is eat cookies.
That's smart.
Yeah, just a little bite. I don't think anybody should gorge on them the first time.
Yeah, you have to be careful. I've heard people say, I can take 1 level tablespoon of vaporized cannabis, but if I take a heaping teaspoon, it's way too much and I get too high. Personally, though, I've got to cut back on the cookies.
Yeah, I like cookies.
Me too. A little too much.
Is there such a thing as too high?
It's up to
yes.
you. I think I could, when you can't talk very much anymore, you just kind of, that's probably a little too much
Okay.
for most of the time.
Thank you very
anyway.
much.
Thank you. Thanks for calling. We have more calls, Casper. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, my name is Suarez, and I'm a sustainable builder. My question pertains to building materials. I'm not sure exactly how far back. I believe it was in the mid-'90s we used to be able to get plywood sheets out of British Columbia made from cannabis. Are you familiar about the imports of materials such as building materials from other countries, and when that might be able to be back in place, or are you familiar with
I know there were some
Columbia's
experimental hemp fiber boards that were made by Washington State University's Wood Sciences Lab, but it's never been commercially available. Now there are a lot of people using hemp mixed with lime to make hempcrete, and there are more fiber options. I can't tell you exactly where to obtain those, but our show is a non-commercial show, so we can't advocate specific companies, but I can say there are some available now, and there'll be more and more of those, and you should also look at hempcrete as a concrete replacement as well.
So are you aware of the export situation? Are we going to be able to get cannabis hemp products?
Oh, yeah. You can import hemp products. And there are local retailers out there. Here's some twine and some hemp seed oil that's been imported. And so I first started importing hemp fabric and hemp paper back in the late 1980s. And so it's been legal to import for some time.
Well, great. Thanks for your show, and I appreciate your information and your existence.
You're very welcome. Thanks for calling. Okay,
And even though we are commercial free, I do want to point out that there are lots of places to enjoy your medical marijuana here in the state of Oregon and here in the city of Portland. And those of you who are looking for your friends where they used to hang out, people like Paul and I and maybe Nikki from Nikki's Diggity Dank, we might have found another spot to smoke at.
Go ahead.
The other spot that I'm talking about is on 72nd and give my regards to Broadway.
Holgate.
Holgate, and remember me on Harold Street. Holgate and 72nd and Harold. That's it. And So go to the other spot, hang out, and tell Nikki you love her.
We love
And
you,
so
Nikki.
do we.
But we have another caller. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for
Are
thank
you?
you for taking my call. Hey, Paul.
You're very welcome. Thanks for
yeah,
calling.
The question I have is earlier this evening, Governor Kitzhaber resigned, and I was wondering, do you know Kate Brown's view of marijuana since she'll be the new governor?
You know, I'm glad you asked that question, because I've been wanting to discuss that. You know, not only do I know Kate Brown, but I worked for Kate Brown in her office in 1997 during her first senatorial session back in the 1997 Oregon legislative session in Salem. I worked in her office answering phone calls, checking letters, and I also got credit at Portland State University. So I was an intern, but she approved me. She knew who I was. She, in fact, dated a friend of mine named John Sajo. And they went together for a period of time there. She becomes Oregon's first, actually the United States' first openly bisexual woman, and she always spoke highly in favor of bisexual rights. She told me I was ahead of my time on marijuana legalization. So I have a very good story to tell you about. So I worked in her office for about 3 months, and I was coming in and lobbying against the recriminalization of marijuana, which had almost passed in the 1995 legislative session. And so I knew that if it made it to the floor, it would pass again in the Oregon legislature. There were a lot of conservative Republicans in there and some Democrats who were supporting it. So I was over in the halls of the House of Representatives when I came upon the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who's now the President of the Oregon Senate, Peter Courtney, who's also an administrator at Willamette University. Anyway, Peter Courtney was there, and I had to take the opportunity to tell him that I thought he was wrong about recriminalizing marijuana. You know, Oregon was the first state to decriminalize marijuana in 1973, and the police were pushing and the federal government was pushing Oregon to recriminalize marijuana, to send a message that marijuana is bad. So I told Courtney that he was wrong and he should stop, and he didn't like that. In fact, that evening in the caucus of the Democratic Party in the state capitol, Courtney called out Kate Brown and said, "Who is this guy confronting me in the halls of the Congress? Make sure he doesn't do that anymore." So the next morning, Kate Brown called me in, and Kate says, "You know, I can't have you lobbying for marijuana when you're working for me. You have to not, if I know you're going to lobby for marijuana, and I'm in favor of that, but you can't do that while you're on my work time." So I said, okay. So there was a hearing on the recriminalization bill, the last hearing, and it had already passed the Senate, was in the House. And so it was before my work hours. It was like 7:30 in the morning when the hearing started, and I didn't actually start till 9. But I went to that hearing, and then it ran over till about 10, so I was late coming into the Kate Brown's office. And so I got in, and her chief of staff, a nice lady who I carpooled with, she told me, "Kate wants you to come down to the floor of the Senate." So for the very first time, and the only time, I went and walked down onto the floor of the Oregon Senate, and Kate fired me as her intern on the floor of the Senate. It wasn't in session. And so, because I had lobbied. But, you know, what happened in the bill is that bill actually passed with by 70% vote in the Oregon legislature in 1997. And then Governor Kitzhaber signed it into law. I was really upset about that. He did it at the last moment. He said he did it reluctantly. But I had publicized that on this show, how he reluctantly signed this bill to recriminalize marijuana in the state of Oregon. And we went out and got 90,000 signatures in about 6 weeks in a referendum and stopped that law from going into effect. So even though, thank you. even though we the legislature passed it by 70%, when it came to a vote in 1998, in fact, it was the same time, November 98, when we said vote no on recriminalization, which was measure 57, and vote yes for medical marijuana in measure 67. And so we had this dual message: vote no on recriminalization, yes on medical marijuana. And for recriminalization, we got 67% of the vote across the state. We won. Every single county in the state voted against recriminalizing marijuana, and it never became an issue again. But it was kind of an evolution of a story how Oregon, the first state to decriminalize marijuana, almost became the first state to recriminalize marijuana as well. And through political action, we stopped that from taking effect and stopped that regressive movement. But I'm glad you brought up that question. I definitely wanted to talk about that tonight. But Kate Brown is a friend who, even though I got fired on the floor of the Senate, and I don't really talk to her, haven't in years, I think she's going to be a great governor for this state. She definitely won't work against this issue.
Good. I'm glad. And one more question.
Okay.
When you talk about cooking marijuana, do you recommend, or does anyone have a microwave marijuana cookbook?
Oh, there are a lot of cookbooks. There are a lot of marijuana cookbooks. Just go out to, those
Using microwave.
books. A microwave? I can't answer that question. I would bet that some people microwave it. I don't really know.
Has anybody microwaved there on the panel?
Say that again?
Has anyone used a microwave oven on marijuana in the panel there?
The thing about it is if marijuana gets too hot, the active ingredients will vaporize. So you can't adjust your temperature very well with a microwave. And so I don't think that microwaving marijuana for its medicinal or psychoactive effects is probably a good idea. You'd want to bake it at a low temperature to make certain that the active ingredients don't vaporize off.
And bake it at what temperature?
Marijuana.
Nothing above about 300 or 280.
Okay.
And marijuana, when you put it in a microwave, well, like everything else, cook from the inside out, and you don't want to do that either.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. We have a little video clip. We're almost out of time with all those phone calls, but let's go ahead and run this clip from Portlander Jorge Cervantes talking about growing outdoors.
Hi, Jorge. That sounds cool, doesn't it?
Well, you can see I've got the shade cloth up. It was quite easy to put up, actually. I'll tell you more about that later. The plants are being shaded very well. They've suffered some damage, but not bad.
Okay, apparently there was a sound issue with that video from our friend Jorge Cervantes, former Portlander. We have another video, though. I don't know, are we ready to run that other video? No? Okay, here's Human and the Human Revolution with the Tree of Life. It's got sound.
Tell y'all a little best road you'll ever hold. Well, the pioneers covered up the wagon trains with the canvas made of hemp. And Washington and Jefferson grew it on their farms and said to make the most of it. The first stars and stripes were sewn on hemp, first Constitution too. It's used around the world for food, fiber, oil, medicine, and fuel. But if we press its seeds, we won't have no need for any other oil. We can make paints and inks, we'll run our car, we'll grow back next season, it'll fix the soil. The most nutritious seed we can put in our mouth with omega-6 and 3. We can feed the world with the tree of life and live sustainably. But if we cut down all the trees, we won't have nowhere to breathe. Grow fields of hemp instead. We can make our paper, build a house from it. It's the goddess plant growing wild and free, living the way that we ought to be. Gonna leave my children a better world than my ancestors left me. Whoa, whoa. La, 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 la. Whoa. Well, the flowers of the female hemp plant make the best medicines on earth. Helps cancer and AIDS patients eat their food. Helps those with depression overcome the blues. Glaucoma, epilepsy, nausea, insomnia, stress, neurosis, psychosis, pain, PMS. All the studies have been done and all the doctors agree that they can't make money off this plant, you see, because it's free. It grows from a seed, wild and free, like we ought to be. You know, the future is growing in our own backyards. But if we cut down all the trees, we won't have nowhere to breathe. Grow fields of hemp instead. We can make our paper, build a house from it. It's a goddess plant growing wild and free, living the way that we ought to be. Gonna leave my children a better world than my ancestors left me. La 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 la. So in this modern day and age, when we seem to lack spirituality, this one single plant can bring us back almost 10,000 years in history. To the Shiva, Puranas, the Jesus, the Christ, to the Buddha, the pagans, the goddess, the light, to commune with all the animals, commune with all the trees, to realize the goddess because inside me is the earth is a mother. We gotta take care of the earth. The earth is the mother that gives life birth, and we can heal all our relations with a single green plant. We can start right now. But if we cut down all the trees, we won't have nowhere to breathe. Grow fields of hemp instead. We can make our paper, build a house from it. It's the goddess plant growing wild and free, living the way that we ought to be. Gonna leave my children a better world than my ancestors left me. Whoa. Yeah, la 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 la. Whoa.
All right, Human and the Human Revolution with his classic song, The Tree of Life. I love that song. That's right up there as my favorite Cannabis song. But we have a caller on the phone. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi, fellas.
Hey.
Hey, I wanted to ask you if you see any hope for commercial drivers, if there's any better testing coming up, or if there's
I do see hope. I do see hope.
Precedents
I mean,
in Colorado, for
it's going to take a change in federal law to change that requirement that people with a commercial driver's license or CDL are required to be tested for marijuana and can't have any whatsoever. But we have the drug czar of the United States saying that we should respect the state's marijuana laws. And there's a story I read at the very first of this show about the National Health and Transportation Safety Administration saying that using marijuana has zero impact on having a car crash. So as long as they start talking about that data, how marijuana doesn't really negatively affect driving the way alcohol does, and this new study from the NHTSA, the National Health and Transportation Safety Association, or whatever it is, it's NHTSA. Once that study becomes more well known, we should see changes in these laws. But it's going to take more lobbying our federal legislators to get these things through. But I see with the changes that we're seeing across the nation in marijuana and across the world in marijuana prohibition that there will be changes, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah, okay. Go, John.
All right. Yeah, check out the that latest study from the NHTSA and use that in contacting state and federal lawmakers and telling them to remove those restrictions to the commercial driver's licenses. Thanks for calling. We have a question online. What are the good points about Washington's I-502? Well, the good points are there are marijuana stores and they're legal to have up to an ounce. That's the best thing about it. So we've seen an end to marijuana prohibition in Washington State when they, along with Colorado, became the leaders when we lost here in Oregon in 2012, but we came back, we won this time. So that is the good point. I don't think there are any other. I don't want to talk about some of the bad points. The tax is too high in Washington. It can be improved over time. That's a question. Also, how can Washington's I-502 be improved? Excuse me. We can lobby the legislators. Again, you have to contact the state legislators in Olympia. Let them know that marijuana is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. And tell them that you want to see these unreasonable restrictions removed. We need to be able to grow our own marijuana in Washington State the way we can do in Washington, in Oregon, Colorado, and in Washington, D.C. So that's what we need the Washington legislature to do. If they don't do it, it'll take an initiative petition to change it. And I'm, of course, in favor of that. I know there are people working toward that. And that's our question online. If you want to watch our show online, you can watch us on Ustream, that address. You want to tell our audience about your cool radio network?
It rocks. Time for Hemp. The global broadcasting network can be heard on iHeart, Tumblr, or SoundCloud. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us at Hemp Triple X. You can find us all around the net. We are a group of people. We are a growing team dedicated to ending prohibition. And we have apps you can download into your smartphones. Lots of groovy things on our website being updated. And we would appreciate it if you shared us with your friends. Thank you for the shameless plug.
Always, always. And we have doctors at clinics all over the country we can refer you to. If you're looking for a medical marijuana permit, we can help you get one in many different states. Whatever state you live in, you can get an Oregon medical marijuana permit. We'll be happy to teach you how to do that. An Oregon medical marijuana permit protects you in several other states that have reciprocity, including Michigan, Maine, Rhode Island, Arizona, Nevada, and ironically, the District of Columbia.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in getting a medical marijuana permit, call us at that number there on your screen. Anywhere in the U.S. of A, it's 1-800-723-0188. That's 1-800-723-0188. If you're here in the Portland area, you can call us locally at this number, 503-281-5100. That's 503-281-5100. And if you want to get involved in the movement in marijuana prohibition and change the laws in the legislature, call our political action line at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. And we'll be happy to hook you up and get you lobbying in this legislative session. So it's an exciting day. We've seen the governor who signed the bill to recriminalize marijuana here in this state resign. Another lady who I work for set to become the state governor. It's a good day.
It is. It is.
It's a good day. I mean, I'm sorry that Kitzhaber didn't have a good day probably. But at the same time, he's caused a lot of other people to have bad days. So.
Now his girlfriend can grow all the marijuana she wants to grow.
I'll help him grow myself.
There you
go.
I
want to thank you guys for watching. We've got John Cornette ready to play music for another 60 seconds or here. Tune in next week and help us restore hemp.
Some folks tomatoes. Some like rhubarb pie. I like when my vegetables get me a little high. May not be for everyone, may not fit your needs, but this incredible edible vegetable is more than just a weed. Edible.